Senator Bernie Sanders is declaring victory in Iowa after results from the caucuses showed a near tie with Pete Buttigieg. The former mayor has a slight advantage in the state delegate count, while Sanders has a slight lead in the popular vote. But the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez, is calling for a recanvass. Senator Bernie Sanders was asked about that yesterday.
We won an 8-person election by some 6,000 votes. That is not going to be changed. What may be changed in this so-called recount is a few SDEs here. But at the end of the day, as I've just indicated, these SDEs are not important. What these SDEs will do is go to a convention in Iowa. They will determine who the Iowa chairman is. They will determine the rules of the Iowa Democratic Party. Very important, I guess, for Iowa Democrats, but not important for the rest of the country. At the end of the day, what will, I expect, almost definitely happen is that Mr. Budaj and I will end up with the same amount of delegates, 11 now each, probably a little bit more. That's what will happen. It ain't going to change. And what certainly is not going to change is the fact that in terms of the popular vote, we want a decisive victory.
I want to bring in Cara Korte. She's a CBS News campaign reporter following the Sanders campaign. So, Cara, why exactly is the Sanders campaign choosing to push for not for a recount or a recanvass?
Well, Rena, what you essentially heard from the senator there, he wants to move forward because he thinks that a recanvass, basically a recount, would rehash small strokes. What he's saying is that we won the popular vote. These state delegates are kind of a less important factor, and we want to move on to New Hampshire. Rena, when you talk to people in the Sanders campaign or really any campaign, when they talk about Iowa and why it's important, it's all about momentum, right? It's the first race. You want to come out and you want to be able to say that you won so you can move forward to the subsequent races with momentum. Rehashing a race is the absolute opposite of momentum, right? So they just want to move on. They want to. They're claiming that they won. They're moving on, and they want to move on to New Hampshire. But also think about this: a recanvass takes resources. It takes not only that, but emotional energy, right? Physical energy. They want to be able to direct all of their attention to New Hampshire, Nevada after that, South Carolina, and so on. So they just want to move forward at this point.
It's interesting. You know, Senator Sanders was actually asked yesterday about the voter turnout in Iowa, the fact that it didn't look any higher than it was last time. Here's what they said.
I would have liked to have seen a higher turnout. I think I could probably speak for every other candidate. But this is what I do want to say. I want to say where I am very excited and what I think bodes well for the overall 2020 election. And that is that last year, in 2016, in the Iowa caucus, in terms of voters who were young people from 17 to 29, 18% of the total vote, 18% was under 29. This election, 24%. That was a very significant increase in young people participating in the Iowa caucus. And actually, as I understand it, it turns out to be even higher, percentage-wise, than the turnout of young people in 2008 when there was a massive turnout and Obama won.
So what role did voter turnout play for Sanders in Iowa?
Well, and I want to share, Nina, some context here, how much the Sanders campaign was relying on large turnout. Senator Bernie Sanders, in the lead up to the caucuses, was telling crowds, turn on the television the night of the caucuses. If they're saying there's historic turnout, you can turn off the TV because that means we won. If they're not saying that, we lost. He was dialing it down to that simple of an equation. And there was not an historic level of turnout. It was slightly up from 16, but it did not meet that 2008 level when then Senator Barack Obama won. So this is a big deal for the Sanders campaign. They didn't really blast it out of the park the way that they were hoping. They're hanging their hat a little bit on that under 30 vote, as we just heard the senator say. Something else they're hanging their hat on, though, Rena, is when you look at Vice President Biden's placement and Senator Warren's placement. Senator Warren in a distant third, and Vice President Biden even further behind her. I spoke to a Sanders Iowa official yesterday who was saying we were going into this race thinking that those two, Warren and Biden, were kind of our biggest opponents. So if you're breaking it down to kind of that one-on-one contest, they're very happy to see that he pretty handily beat Warren and beat Biden. So they're taking that as a victory as well.
I also want to point out an event this morning where Senator Sanders called out Pete Buttigieg for his donors. I want to play for you what he said.
I'm reading some headlines from newspapers about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg has most exclusive billionaire donors of any Democrat. That was from Forbes. The Hill. Pete Buttigieg tops billionaire donor list. Fortune. Pete Buttigieg takes lead as big business candidate in 2020 field. Washington Post. Pete Buttigieg lures even closer look from Wall Street donors following strong Iowa caucus performance.
We see Buttigieg soaring in the polls right now. How's the Sanders campaign going to take that on?
Rena, that same senior Sanders Iowa official I spoke to yesterday, I was talking to them about how do you move forward if Mayor Buttigieg is now your biggest competition. And this source said to me, if this race turns into a face-off between Senator Sanders and Mayor Buttigieg, that would be a, quote, slam dunk for Sanders. And if you want to carry on with that basketball analogy, Sanders was dunking this morning. It was like a Vince Carter-like performance of a dunk. What they really want to play on when it comes to Buttigieg is his funding. Mayor Buttigieg is not in New Hampshire today because he was in New York and New Jersey these past couple days fundraising, right? That's something that you're not going to hear Senator Sanders doing. So they really want to play on that. Remember a couple months ago, there was that wine cave picture that came out of Mayor Buttigieg holding a fundraiser in this kind of ritzy, elegant setting. That was something the Sanders campaign played off of a lot. They fundraised off of it themselves. So if they can hit Buttigieg on fundraising, they think that's a really strong case for Sanders, but also Medicare. Bernie Sanders is known for Medicare for all. Pete Buttigieg is known for Medicare for all who want it. So it's kind of playing out to be a really natural foil when you think about it, Sanders v. Buttigieg. When you compare Sanders to Biden, there's some overlap sort of between their folksiness and their support of union members and working class people. Obviously, the overlap between Sanders and Warren being that they're both progressives, but Buttigieg and Sanders just might be kind of the two most opposite Democrats in the race right now. Of course, most obviously their age being big disparities. So it's really, really interesting. I think we're going to see Sanders, as we did this morning, vocally oppose Buttigieg more often and maybe at a louder voice than we're used to hearing from Sanders.
A lot to watch in tonight's debate. Cara Korte, thank you.